All right, so I think we can start the session. So once again, good evening, everyone. I'm Rashmi from greytHR and today's moderator of the session. So I welcome you all today to our 48 Ask the Expert webinar Parichay. And as you may know, the topic for today is organization culture in 2023, challenges, solutions, and opportunities. So before I dive into the topic, let's do a little housekeeping on how the session goes. So as usual, the session is divided into two parts, wherein in the first part, we will have a thorough discussion about our today's topic with our today's expert, which will then be followed by audience Q&A. Audience Q&A is where I can tell time is all yours. That's when you can start putting across your questions using the Q&A option of the Zoom control panel, and we will be happy to take it up and try and find the answers for them. All right. And also the session is currently being recorded. So if you happen to miss out on any part of the session, do not worry. The recording will be shared with all of you once the session is done. So on this note, I think we can now start this session. So to talk about our today's topic, I think in a world that is ever changing and evolving, it is imperative that we evolve along the way as well. We have seen how the ways of work has changed, right? There's more emphasis on employee experience now. People are no longer just working for the monetary benefits or the position. Rather, they are looking for organizations that have a good culture, which are rich in diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongingness. Nobody wants a boss who just approves leave requests anymore. They want someone who is empathetic and understanding. So there are many ways in which a company's culture is changing today. But along with that, there are also challenges faced by companies in implementing those culture changes. So it is important to understand company culture now. So what we do is in the next 1 hour, we are going to discuss all of this in length with our expert speaker for today, Mr. Govind Singh Negi, Head of Talent Europe and India, 3-Pillar Global, and understand organizational culture in detail. But before that, let me tell you a little bit more about Mr. Govind. So he's an HR and business leader, blogger, social activist, investor with dual masters in computer application and business administration from Symbiosis University, Pune, with over 20 years of rich experience in the field of talent management. He is a recipient of several awards such as HR Leader by the Great Place to Work, and then Top 100 HR Tech Minds by World HRD Congress, Best CHRO by WE Matters, Top 20 India Talent Champions, and L&D Leader by CHRO Summits, and Honorary Professorship by SPSU University. Also, let me tell you, he's also the founder of the HR social group called HR Success Talk, which has over 150,000 members and also a regular blogger. So he enjoys guiding HR professionals in their growing career. So Mr. Govind, we are very excited to have you here in the session. Once again, welcome to the session.
Thank you, Rashmi.
So dear participants, I think on this note, we'll head towards the first part of our session, that is having a discussion with Mr. Govind today. So Mr. Govind, to start off with, I'd like to know, how will you decode an organizational culture?
Yeah, Rashmi, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this great webinar. And I would say thanks to all the audience for finding time on Thursday. Tomorrow is a Good Friday, so I know many people, the weekends might start from tomorrow. And what a great way to end the weekend by learning something new and learning about a topic which is very complex like culture. Because in many ways, when you're learning about total rewards, compensation, payroll, labor laws, performance management, those are, I would say, things which have like clear-cut rules and regulation into the max level. But when we talk about organization culture, it is a topic which is very subjective. And let me start from saying that organization culture depends a lot on the industry you belongs to, right? You might listen to a lot of news like Google does this, Accenture does that, or maybe Nestle does this, but they do it because their culture, the way they have built their culture supports their business, right? So you have to make sure that the culture of the organization is aligned with the business and industry you are. Now, coming to the decoding of the organization culture, as the organization culture itself is a very complex topic, decoding of organization culture is going to be more difficult. Like it is basically about judging what is the organization culture right now in a particular organization. So how do you do that? Now, if you go to an organization and you want to see what kind of culture the organization might have, the first thing one can do is to observe that how employees are behaving in the organization. So basically, organization culture is nothing. How you think the things are done here. Like simple. What is the culture in your region? How things are done here. What is the culture in your family? How things are done here. Similarly, what is the culture in the company? How things are done here, right? Like you said, culture of a company could be the bosses are there to approve leaves. Culture of different company could be that the bosses are there to support employees. Culture of one company could be that bosses are supposed to give orders. Like in our military, right? In your military setup, you can't expect that the juniors start arguing with the senior. Military will not sustain if you go with that culture. There, the orders of a superior is the last verdict. And that's the culture they need to sustain the military kind of setup. So again, nothing is like wrong or good. It is all about what do you need to make sure your organization is sustained. So if you want to know what kind of culture it is, you should just watch employees, how they are behaving. Are they collaborative? Are they competitive? Are they willing to support each other? Are they not? Look at if you have an opportunity to go to the company and look at the setup of the company, you can just find like whether they have closed cabins in the company where the general managers are given a big cabins and the managers are giving smaller and the other people are sitting outside, or they have like open setup where everybody is same. They have a desk where they have to sit and work. I come from an IT company, as you mentioned in my introduction. In my organization, the work culture is open. So we don't have cabins. The cabins are there for meetings only. I also gonna have a place along with other people in the organization because I have a job to do, right? Of course, there are conference rooms if you want to have conversation like that. So you can figure out from the physical setup also that what kind of culture we are talking in the organization. You can also look at the organization structure. Like if there is a hierarchical structure, you have like, hey, manager and senior managers, and there's a hierarchical or there's a flat structure in the organization. Is there a dotted line reporting, cross-functional reporting in the organization? That also gonna tell you that what kind of culture this organization will have. And the most important thing, which I always say, is the leadership of the organization. I think by talking to the leadership, one can figure out what kind of culture this organization will have. In India, this particular saying goes a lot, ki bhai Lala company hai. The reason when they say a Lala company hai, they actually mean that the leadership of the company is thinking from a Lala perspective. They only think about money and not about employees. Why we say that? Because the Lala is basically a representative of the leadership of the organization. So when you talk to the leadership and you listen to their thoughts, what they think about employee engagement, what they think about the progress of the employees, what they think about office infrastructure or facilities which they want to give their employees. I think that's where, if you look at all of them together, it's not the easy thing to decode organization culture. But if you look at all of things together, you might get to have a sense of what kind of organization culture this company has.
Wonderful. I'm sure this definitely helps us a lot in understanding a company. Also, Mr. Govind, according to you, what are the top 5 workplace culture priorities?
Well, again, this will depend from all my answers. I will say that it will depend from industry you come from and company you come from. And I think I've given enough examples of why a culture of one particular industry will differ from another company. And the simplest example of that is that IT companies can afford work from home, but a manufacturing companies can't, right? This is a very simple example of how I put it, like why culture has to be different. But there are still some elements which will always gonna take the top priority when we talk about the culture of an organization. And if I have to think of the top 5, the first one I will give priority to is the clear communication. Like you also said that nowadays people are not necessarily working for money. They do work. Every one of us work for money, but I think we take money as granted. Let me put it this way. Like we say, hey, if you're going to do a job, money will come automatically. What is the other thing I'm getting other than money is the question which we ask when we decide which company we need to join, right? And as you go up in the ladder, the organizational culture matters a lot. And if you talk to senior people, they might like to take a pay cut, but join a company which has a better culture because they know how much culture is important than a pay, right? But when you are starting your career, maybe money take the first place because you might think if the culture is not good, I will quit the company, join another one. But at the senior level, if you're changing the company very frequently, it might not be a good thing on your resume. So if I have to talk about the first thing, I would say the clear communication, that employees need to have more understanding of how business is happening. They don't want the sweet talk. If the business is doing great, they want to hear that. If the business is not doing great, they want to hear that. If there is a change in the process, they would like to know the change in the process, and they would also like to know why the process has changed. So I think this is one of the things, if you have to build a great workplace culture, clear communication could be the one of the biggest thing. Second thing, which is a buzzword nowadays, is work-life balance. Now, this work-life balance is becoming very important, and COVID has taught many of us that the life is not all about just working every like 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours. It's also about looking after yourself, being with your family. And I think gradually people have started giving a lot of value to the work-life balance. And that's where you must have seen the concept of great resignations. People have started thinking, should I still continue my job? Should I just leave it? Should I just go and work as a part-time worker as opposed to a full-time worker? And I think that's where if an organization, in the best capability the organization have, as I said, not all organization can give you a lot of flexibility, but if they can, they should be focusing on work-life balance. The third thing I would say is investing in the development of your people. I think this always reminds me a story where a CFO came to a CHRO and said, why we have to invest so much of money on the learning and development of our people if end of the day they have to leave. What the CFO meant is that, hey, we spend so much of dollars, rupees on people, we give them external trainings, and after a couple of months or years, they leave us and they join other company. Why do I need to invest that much of money? And the CHRO said, imagine what if you don't invest in their learning and development and they stay with us. So I think that's the way you think about it, right? And if organization can invest a lot on the development of their people, that would be the top 5, one of the top 5 priorities when we build a workplace culture. The fourth one I would say is recognizing your people for the great work they have done. And when I say recognize, I necessarily don't always meant to give something monetary. It's not that you have to always give some gifts or vouchers. I think if you ask me, one of the biggest way of recognizing somebody is sending an appreciation note and saying, hey, yesterday you gave me a report and that report was awesome. Or the presentation you made today in front of the client was really great, and I'm thankful to you for working very hard on that. This sounds very small, but these are the most powerful way you can recognize your people. I think in our day-to-day busy life, we tend to pinpoint the mistakes our people are doing, but we forget about the great work they are doing and appreciating them for those great work. So this is my fourth one, I would say. And the last one is treating people with dignity and respect. Always make sure that you are, when your team member are coming to you for any support, you should treat them with dignity and respect. And treating dignity and respect does not mean that you have to always sugarcoat what you have to say. And I think whenever I say that treat people with dignity and respect, people think that, okay, what about a non-performer in my team? Should I also be sugar-coated and treat the person with dignity and respect? I think the answer is yes. Even if you are telling your junior that that person has not done something in a proper way is also treating that person with dignity and respect, unless you are saying it in a bad way. So if I'm going to tell my junior that, hey, you could have done it better, this is the mistake in the report, I think he should be happy that I've treated him with dignity and respect and told him there, as opposed to telling him after 6 months or 12 months during his appraisal, saying that that day you did not make a report properly. I think that gives the person the opportunity to work on it. So I think these are the 5 things I would say: clear communication, work-life balance, continuous learning and development, rewarding your people, and treating them with dignity and respect are the 5 top priorities for me in our culture.
Absolutely, absolutely, Mr. Govind. I think, like you rightly mentioned earlier, I think culture is the character and personality of the organization. So it has to be as important as business objectives. So thank you so much for sharing these insights. Next thing I would like to hear from you is, can you please help us understand why the conversation about organizations' culture is relevant now more than ever?
Well, that's an awesome question. By the way, it was always important, but I would tell what has happened in past few years that has triggered this conversation more. And I'll connect you with certain things which you might have seen in the past. First thing was COVID, as I was mentioning. When COVID happened, and I think all of us, our audience can also relate with that. When COVID happened, I think we did thought about it, that whether job or business or earning money, is this the only thing we are valuing in our life? There are, like in the second wave of the COVID, especially in India, many of our relatives died, right? And I'm sure everybody has somebody they lost, whether a close relative or a long distance relative or neighbors during this second wave of COVID. That made us think that the life is uncertain. And that's where people have started valuing life more than, or quality of life more than money. Now, when we started valuing our life and the quality of life more than anything else, then work, doing job, work, business is part of our life. We don't want to make it stressful. We don't want that because of my job and my business, I should get that much of stress that I am losing all the golden moments I could have enjoyed with my family or could have done something which I'm passionate about. And that's what I'm saying, that you must have heard of great resignations. Many people left and they went to mountains and they did certain things. They started practicing their hobbies. They have made their hobbies as their career in the future, right? That was the trigger for many people. Now, because of COVID, fortunately, unfortunately, many organizations are now either remote or hybrid. Now, when you talk about remote and hybrid, the work culture becomes very important. Because imagine, like, let's say you and me are working in the same company and you're sitting in one part of India and I'm sitting in the other part of India, and we have never met each other. We always know each other through a video call. In this, currently or before COVID, when people used to come to office, they used to see each other by face. They used to know each other by name. There was a connection, right? And how do I say it? There was an unsaid agreement between the manager and the team member that if something will go wrong, the employee will go and talk to the manager. Today, there is no such agreement because for people, the manager is somebody on the screen. And if I got a job, if I get a job offer, it will just take me a while, say, I'm resigning, because other person is not a human for me. It's like somebody on the screen. So people are not interacting a lot. And that's where I think the organization culture is becoming way more important than what it was earlier. Today, the market nowadays, the market is little unstable, but it's unstable only in field of IT. I would say manufacturing, hospitality, other industries are doing pretty good right now. And India is far better than other countries in the world as far as the business are concerned. With the increase in the business, there is a demand for talent. Now, when it's very clear cut, right? It's a demand and supply. If the supply of talent you need is less, then you need to give them more than money to attract them towards you. So that's where companies nowadays started talking about organizational culture a lot. So they say, hey, we're going to give you 30% increase in your salary. But by the way, we have a work from home permanently. Hey, by the way, we give you a 1-year gym membership for taking care of your health. Hey, by the way, we are giving you that. So that's where this work culture is now a talk, because talent was always important, but it's becoming more important because there is a fight to get the talent out there. So that's why I think it's more important than ever to talk about organization culture.
Sure, Mr. Govind. I think in simple, if I have to tell you, then I think culture for any organization is like a work in progress, right? So it will and it can change. So it depends. It all depends on the time. So thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on this. Next thing I would like to hear is, from you is, according to you, what are the factors determining an organization's culture?
Yeah, I think I always say the biggest thing which impacts an organization culture is the leadership. Because if you look at, if you say, hey, what is the culture of the organization? It will always be top down. It will never be bottom up. So the message has to come from the top, that what kind of culture we want to build. And I think I will repeat, the culture might differ from industry to industry. Like we cannot compare the culture of hospitality with the culture of IT company. We cannot compare the culture in the military organization with the culture in the manufacturing organization industry. So it will differ. But I think the culture mostly depends from the leadership perspective. If that is the one thing I have to say, the leadership is the most important factor which drives the culture down the line. And they have to also act accordingly. So if you are saying that we want to build a culture where employees are valued, then people should see leadership valuing their employees. And that's where this will tackle down in the organization. The second thing I will say is that, which I think many organizations take it lightly. Many places, the vision and the mission of the organization is there on the papers. You will either find it during the onboarding process, or you will find it pasted on the wall, but not necessarily that is exercised down the line in the organization. So I think that is the second most important factor which drives what the organization culture will look like. Like, what is the vision of the organization? What is the mission of the organization? That will define what the culture of the organization should look like. Other than that, I would also say, again, I think I said the industry will differ, makes a lot of difference, in the sense that if you are in a particular industry, you will expect a particular kind of culture in the industry. Fourth thing, I would say the organization structure is something which can define what the organization culture will look like. So if you have a hierarchical organization, you know that, hey, if you have to get something approved, there is a process to it and you should go through it. Like, especially in startup, you see this is a flat organization, right? They can go to the CEO directly. It also depends how big you are as an organization. You can't do that when you're a bigger organization, right? You have to make sure that there is a layer applied which can support employees when answering their questions. The last thing I would say, employees' behavior, how employees behave. But to a certain extent, that is something which can be driven through leadership, through mission and vision, through organization structure. So those things can be put in place. But how employees are behaving in the organization is also a factor to define the organization culture in the organization. So these are a couple of things I would say that are the factors which determine organization culture.
Sure, Mr. Govind. Yeah. Also, dear participants, while we continue our conversation with Mr. Govind, I would now request to put down your questions in the Q&A option of Zoom control panel, and in sometime soon we'll be able to take it up. Right. So also, Mr. Govind, and I must say this is actually going in a very interesting direction. So I would like to hear more from you about the strategies that can help in creating a good culture.
Yeah, and before go to that question, Rashmi, let me just give you an example of my my journey with 3 Global. I joined 3 Global 6.5 years back, and when I joined 3 one of the assignment, or one of the top priority for me, was to build the culture in the organization. The culture which is same as 3 pillar global culture. So, and it was a hard job for me because, as I said, understanding an organization culture and building an organization culture is not an easy task to do. So, why I'm telling you this story, because this could be the answer of your question, that what is that you need to, what are the strategies that can help in creating a good culture, are some strategies which I started working on. And I would say that whenever you have to start thinking of a culture, first of all, we have to understand what is the culture right now and where is the place we want to go. So in our case, when I joined 3pillar, I try to understand by talking to the leadership, talking to the employees, looking at what people think about 3pillar Global as an organization, and then also talking to the senior global leaders in 3pillar, understanding what they want from a culture perspective in 3pillar. And when that gap was understood, it took me 2.5 years to reach to the stage where we wanted to reach. It was a long, difficult roller coaster journey for all of us. We have to take some tough decision during the process to make sure that we reach to our objective of building the organization culture with 3pillar wants. But if you ask me in general, that if some strategy has to be built from an organization culture perspective, what has to be done? I think first of all, leadership has to lead by example. So if you are the leader of the organization, whether you are a small office, big office, whosoever you are, if you are the leader of the organization, you have to lead by example by exhibiting all the values and the culture you think as an organization are important for you. And as I said, for example, if you say our organization values is to have clear communication, but when employees are asking why we have not got X percentage increment in the organization, you are not answering the question straight away. So I think that's where it's not lead by example. You have to lead by example by encouraging your people. So it could be anything, but what I'm trying to say is that the organization leadership has to make sure that we are leading by example. The second thing I would say is that we have to encourage our employees to have open communications with the leadership of the organization. And how that can be done? Simple ways. As an organization, you can have open door policy. You can communicate that policy to your employees. We can tell them that you can reach out to anybody if you want to. You can have town halls where employees can come and ask questions. So this is another way by which you can have some strategy around that to create a good work culture. And whenever you talk about culture, the first thing comes to your mind is that it is good for employees. So I think the organization also need to work on what kind of employee engagement activities you might like to do. And now, when I say employee engagement activity, I did not necessarily only mean that you have to have some birthday celebrations, work anniversary celebration, or festival celebration. Of course, that is important. But other than that, what are the other kind of employee engagement activities you are doing? And that includes learning and development and developing themselves. So do you have processes in your organization to sponsor the external training a person wants to do? So I think that kind of thing can also be done. Promoting a work-life balance could be a great way by which you can create an awesome work culture in the organization. So there are many, but I think these are the top I could think of, Rashmi, that we should look from a strategy perspective when we are thinking to build an awesome work culture.
Sure, Mr. Govind. Also, thank you for sharing your journey with us. It was quite interesting. Mr. Govind, we all agree with the fact that any change in the business comes with its own set of challenges, right? So next thing I would like to hear from you is, what are the challenges that are faced by HRs and company leaders in building a culture in the organization?
Well, as I said, the journey of 2.5 years for me to understand and build a culture. And I can tell you what are the challenges I faced when I worked with the leadership of 3pillar to build the culture we wanted in the organization. And the most important one was the alignment you need in the leadership. As I said, like, the culture will always be top. So it is a tough job depending upon your organization to organization, right? It is a tough job to make sure that the leaders in the organizations are aligned on the kind of culture they want to build. And then they're willing to exercise it also. So I think that's one of the important things. Second is there are a lot of communication breakdowns. So you know what, communication, people take it very lightly. But I can tell you, communication in the organization is the most important thing. You know, there are a lot of organizations who has internal communication team to make sure that the communication is going to the organization is going in the right way. Whether it is about the communication, the processes, whether it is about any kind of communication. I think that is the key factor which HR and business leaders face when they're trying to talk about the way they want to build the culture. And the message you want to give to your communication is also very important. And the last is, not last, but the other one is the lack of resources which we think put it into this work. So every company wants to have built a very great, good culture, but how much they want to invest in that is also important. Like, you need to have investment, right? I understand that not everything you want to do to build your culture will need money, but there will be some budget you have to allocate to make sure that you are giving a message to your team member that you are willing to invest in the culture of the organization. That could be another thing which might be a problem. So basically changing the culture is a change in itself. You're changing something, and with every change comes some resistance. Whether you're changing for good, you're changing for bad, there will be some resistance which will come from either employee, managers, or leadership in the organizations. I think this is another level of difficulty you face when you wanted to build a culture. Then there are some external factors which might not be completely in your hands, which I think, like, for example, if there's economic change, for example, you're building the culture and suddenly you realize that the economy for this particular industry has gone down, right? And then what do you do? Now, for example, there are a lot of debate right now among AI and the traditional way of things are happening, right? So there are some disruption happening at the industry level. So those external factors are also there. So these are some of the challenges we have to face as HR and company leaders while building the culture of the organization.
All right. So while these are the challenges, I think now let's talk about opportunities. So Mr. Govind, can you please throw some light on what are the opportunities that are available now to create a culture belongingness and everything at the workplace?
Yeah, I think this is what I was talking about, that nowadays people do not necessarily feel belong to an organization. In many ways, it has become transactional. What I mean by that, and especially what we have noticed, this is my personal experience, what we have noticed is that with the younger generation, job is a very transactional thing which is happening. So they don't mind changing the job quickly. So the average tenure is also going down with the new generation which is coming up, and job is becoming more transactional for people. And that's where it is also a challenge for organizations to create a culture of belongingness to the workplace. Like, example, hey, do you feel belonged to the organization you're working for? There are many ways you can do it, but it will depend from like what kind of organization you are, what is that you want to do. But there are multiple ways you can do it. First of all, you can emphasize on diversity and inclusion. And diversity and inclusion is not necessary, I'm talking about gender. There are many ways you can bring the diversity and inclusion. It is also about bringing a diversity and inclusion of generations. You must have heard that a best team is when the team members are coming with diverse opinion and coming with diverse capabilities. And that's where I think if the organization start fostering lot diversity and inclusion among the employees, that will be a great way to do it. The other opportunity could be investing in employee engagement activities and finding creative ways to do employee engagement, especially when your organization, when your team member are working remotely or your team member are working in a hybrid model. The other way you can make people feel belong to the organization is, imagine, Rashmi, that your organization is as concerned as you are about your own development. So let's say your manager comes and say, you know what, Rashmi, I think you have done a fabulous job. I think you should do a course or MBA in marketing. And you know what? Good news, greytHR is going to fund for that. Now, this message is not necessarily about money, but the message that the organization and the manager is willing to invest on you, knowing that you might not stay with them forever, is going to give you a feeling that you belong to the great. There's a moral obligation you have towards great HR. And that's the message for them. I think these are the things people can invest in the professional development. We spoke about empathy. And I must tell you that if you ask me one person who is most important for building the culture of the organization, is not HR department, is not leaders of the organization. It is manager in any form. A culture is defined by the manager. And you must be aware that majority of people leave because of the manager, right? These are well-known facts, right? If the manager is the brand ambassador of your culture, I think that's where you should be investing in. And that's where I think when you start working on your manager and your manager start looking after your people, you create a culture of belongingness altogether. I think these are the various opportunities. There are many more, but I think these are the key one, which if an organization can do, they will make their employee belong to the organization.
Sure, Mr. Govind.
So by the way, sorry,
yeah,
there is an interesting debate going on right now in our circle as well, that do we really need to build a culture of belongingness? I'll tell you why it is so. Companies spend a lot of many good companies are spending a lot of dollars on employee engagement, either by way of giving them facilities, taking care of health and wellness, investing in their development. But what we are noticing is also that people don't give it that much of attention. They feel like this is something they will get in every company. And that's where they don't feel belonged to the organization. And because of that, they leave the company as soon as they get a good opportunity. So now there is a debate going on in the HR fraternity world that do we really need to create a culture of belonging, or should we also become transactional? You know what? The company also become transactional. Hey, you know what, guys? Forget about everything. Tell us how much increase you need in the salary. You need 40%, we'll give you 40%. Stay with us. How long are you going to stay with us? For 1 year? Great. So mentally, I'm prepared that after 1 year, you're going to leave. I'm going to hire somebody else. So it's become very transactional, which is a very dangerous way of going towards. But when you look at the ROI in all the things you are doing, there is a debate which is happening, which is dangerous, I would say. But I just wanted to make sure, because we're talking about organization culture, there is a sense coming that does organization culture really matters, or only money matters? If only money matters, rather than investing into the organization culture, maybe put it into the salary package of the employee and say, this is what you get, 10% extra, stay with us for 1 year, and we don't expect anything else more than 1 year from you, and we will find a better alternative. So I just wanted to call it out for our audience that there are lots such conversations are also happening.
Definitely, Mr. Govind. I think this helps a lot. Also, my next question, Mr. Govind, there could be extension of what we are discussing right now. We can't talk about culture and not mention DIB, right? So that is diversity, equity, inclusion, and belongingness. So according to you, what are some of the best DIB practices that organizations should be implementing right now?
Yeah, I think this is a buzzword nowadays, and a lot of organizations are trying to make sure that in the organization, they have the diversity, they have equity, they have inclusion, they have belongingness. And this is one of the buzzword, and many big organizations are working on it. The way I see it is that if there are some of the best practices, you have to put it in the organization. First of all, I think you, as an organization, you should conduct a diversity audit in your organization. And as I again said, diversity does not only mean from a gender diversity perspective. There could be other ways by which you want it. Like, for example, many organizations, and still India is not that great in that. If you look at leadership positions, most of the leadership positions are filled by male leaders as opposed to female leaders. I think that's where one of the area that that organization can do a better job. So first of all, I think we should, as an organization, conduct some diversity audit. We can also establish some employee groups which are working in this direction, where we can bring the employees from diverse. And I can give you some examples. Like in AAA Global also, we have various committees. So we are a work from anywhere company, permanent, like all the employees work from home. We have offices. If people wants to come to office, they come, but normally they don't. Earlier COVID, we used to give 24/7 food. So we had a committee called Jagruti, and in this, we have a committee called Jagruti. So there, what we used to do is we used to have people from across the department, senior, junior, everybody, who used to make sure that the food quality is good. Then we have another group which used to take care of what kind of events we should do in an organization. So I think if you bring if you make those kind of committees where people are coming from diverse thought, that will also help you to do things in a better way. They can look after various aspects. You can also create some task force which is looking across the organization and working on the vision of bringing DEIB in place. You can also bring some flexible benefits to in the organization, which supports that. It could be flexible work arrangement, it could be a mental health, it could be a parental leaves, stuff like that, which you can bring. For example, if there are working mothers, like how can you support working mothers to work in the organization? So I think there are a lot of stuff you can practice inclusion in hiring. I remember once we said that, so we were supposed to hire 100 apprentices, and we said that out of 100, we're going to hire like minimum 50 girls from engineering colleges. It could be more, but the less we have to do is the 50 out of them. I think you can put those kind of practices in your hiring as well, bring some inclusion. And that's not about gender. You can also think about especially abled people. You can also think about generation genders. You can also think about economical segment to bring to your organization. So I think these are the various ways these are some of the best practices you can apply.
Sure, Mr. Govind. I think this helps again a lot. Before we head towards our audience questions, I have one last question for you. So today, as you know, it's all about technology, right? So do you think technology can help in building a good company culture?
Yeah, it can definitely. And I think we should never look at technology as a hindrance. We should always look at technology as an enabler to support in anything we do, and it can definitely help in organizational culture. Now, if you look at when I spoke about organizational culture, I said communication is one of the most important way, right? Now, when you're working with a organization where you have hybrid or we are remote, or you have a large organization, even if you're coming to company, you might not be able to get chance to meet everybody, right? Now, here, if you have to communicate, you can leverage technology to have an effective way of communication, right? Like whenever our CEO or somebody, a leadership sends a message, we want them to record the message and send as opposed to writing an email and send, right? This is the use of technology you can do. So I think definitely technology can help. And one of the ways they can help is by communication. The culture is built through interactions, and you can find multiple ways to interact. You can interact for knowledge sharing. Like today we are interacting for knowledge sharing, right? So let's say if I'm assuming that all of us are part of one company, and we are sharing knowledge with each other. We are trying to build a connection. We are trying to build a culture. Now, technology like Zoom call or all that can definitely play a role in bringing the platform where we can share knowledge. We talk about employee engagement. There are a lot of technology tools which has come up to bring the employee engagement. If you go to the market and look at a lot of AI tool, non-AI tool, where you will be able to engage your employees through various technology interventions. I also mentioned that in culture, one of the important aspects is investing in the development of your people. Now, investing in the development of your people is coming through a lot of technology companies which are there, which will help you to train your team members. So now when you're training people at a large level, you can leverage technology. So I think there are many ways, whether it is having remote get-togethers, stuff like that. I think technology can be used. So definitely technology is an enabler for building a great culture. We have to use it as one of the catalysts to spark it. I don't think it's a hindrance. It is definitely a catalyst, especially if your company is remote and hybrid or large organization where it is absolutely not possible to go to every person. It's not scalable. So you use technology for that.
All right, Mr. Govind, I think It was definitely insightful and a knowledgeable session. Thank you for sharing all the information and details on this buzzing topic. I think now we can head towards our audience questions. There are quite a few here, as I can see. So I'll just take them up one by one and request you to please help them understand this situation. Yeah. So one of our attendee would like to know, can we relate employee behavior to employee engagement?
Absolutely. Employee behavior is the first sign of employee engagement, right? You must have heard there are multiple kind of employees. One is which are highly engaged, and you can see from their behavior. They're coming up, they're willing to help, they're excited, they're passionate, they come to office, they create a lot of good vibes. Then there are different kind. There's another kind of employees who kind of in between. They are not very engaged, not very disengaged. So they are very neutral. They will come, they will do their job. They are like, hey, I get paid for my job, so I'm going to do my job. If you ask them to do something extra, they will say, no, this is not in my JD. So I won't do it. So these are like, okay. So you can guess from them. And then there are disengaged employees. So disengaged employees are more dangerous, like the sense they will not take interest in anything, right? They will try to do bare minimum. Sometimes they become non-performers because of that. So I think that definitely, Arpit, the employee's behavior is the first and the most significant sign of employee engagement. So if you come to any floor in any company, you meet people, you will also, as I said, if you have to decode the organization culture, the first thing you look at is the employee behavior. Then you will understand what kind of culture this particular organization has. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Govind. Yeah, I'm sure this has helped our attendee a lot. Next question, it's very interesting. So the question is, how do we cascade new values in an organization where the culture was not defined in the initial stage and they decide to do it after 10 years?
Yeah, first of all, I say congratulations, even if the company has decided it to do after 10 years. So honestly speaking, not every company thinks about culture in the beginning. And if you look at the way things are going nowadays, this is a culture of startup, right? When the startup is built, they don't think about culture. They think about revenue and profit first. I think the organizations start thinking about culture when they start feeling that they are into a scalable model. To a certain extent, you are like family. You're 5 people, 10 people, 20 people. The CEO knows everybody with name and everything. But when you start becoming bigger, CEO might not know everybody by name. In that stage, you need to build the culture. So I would say that even if the organization has decided to build the culture after 10 years, congratulations. They at least started thinking that we are going to be an organization which now need to think about culture. So if they have not done it in the past, but what I would say is that don't be in hurry. It is very important for the leadership to understand what kind of culture you want to build in the organization. Because culture is not just a piece of paper, you just said something that you want to build. You have to exercise it, right? So I would say that the leadership of the organization should think what kind of culture we want to build. They should inform and educate the employees that, hey, we are going towards this direction. Talk about your values. Like every company has different values, right? Some value customer more, some value employee more, some value investors more, or whatever it is. But whatever the culture you want to build, you have to communicate, and then you have to walk the talk. You have to exhibit those. So I would say no worries, even if it is not the case in the beginning. If it is the case now, please follow a process. Culture is not something you can make in overnight. It is a gradual process. It needs a lot of conversation, a lot of time, investment, and everything. That's why you must have our OD consultants in the organization. When they come, OD consultant comes, they are the one who's responsible for making sure that the culture is, but it's a longer one, depending upon how big you are. It's a longer process.
Sure, I hope that answers the question. One of our attendee would next like to know, how does an organization accurately identify the elements of its own culture?
Yeah, I think I answered that when you asked me how to decode a culture. So I think that's the same thing that, hey, how do you identify what kind of culture we are, like, hey, do we have a culture of open communication? Do we have a culture where we wanted to invest into people? Do we have a culture where we give more weightage to employee or client? I think these all things can be done when you go and talk to people, when you look at employee behavior, as our first attendee asked the question, when you see the employee behavior, when you see what employee are talking about organization, when you see what ex-employees are talking about the organization, when you see what is the organization hierarchy is all about, flat, and when you talk to the leadership, or you listen to leadership in any way, form or way, you will get to know accurately what is the culture of this organization. You might like it, you might not like it. But yeah, this is how you can decode it.
Sure, Mr. Govind. Also, Mr. Govind, I remember you're talking to us about the strategies of building the work culture, right? So one of our attendees would like to know what are the strategies that you are using at your company to promote the culture?
Yeah, and we also touched upon that a little bit. I would say the first thing is that open communication. Employees want transparent thing. We are not kids. We can handle stuff. If company is doing awesome, we want to know that. If company is not doing awesome, we want to know that as well. If company is giving us more bonus than last year, we want to know that and why. If company is giving less bonus than last year, we want to. So I think we are not kids. I think open communication is the key, being transparent. Of course, if there are confidential information, you don't want to put them into open communication. The second is, I think the leadership of the organization should walk the talk. They should exhibit the culture they want to, like in military, right? The culture is you cannot disobey your superior. If the superior is going to say, hey, go and fight, you have to go and fight. Otherwise, you will be court-martialed if you disobey that. But it might not be the case in our company, right? If our manager says, hey, go and fight, we'll say, why? Why you want me to fight, right? But that's the culture we want in our company, but that's the culture we don't encourage in military, right? So your leadership has to walk the talk. For example, if you're in military and you're reporting to a captain and you saw the captain not obeying the general, do you think you will obey the captain? No, because you have seen the captain is also doing the same. Similarly, in your organization, if you wanted to encourage a open communication or open thought culture, and you see that your manager is not asking questions to his superior or her superior, you will feel that I think I should also not ask questions to myself. I think the leadership has to exhibit that. The other one I would say is that there has to be investment in the employee engagement. There has to be investment in the development of employees, and these are some of the strategies by which you promote the culture of your organization.
Sure, Mr. Govind. I hope that answers the question. Also, Mr. Govind, you're talking about having good managers, or probably being good with their subordinates, right? Because that's what is being reflected on brand name again. So I think one of our attendees would like to know more about it. So the question is, should there be training especially for managers to promote and implement culture at the workplace, because they are the face of the company?
Absolutely. There is no way to say no to it. As I said earlier, that if one place you want to invest from a culture perspective, it has to be managers. Because end of the day, to whom you talk a lot with, either your colleagues or your manager, right? Let's say, assume you're having a one-on-one with your manager, and the manager comes and say, you know what, hey, do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and then it's done. You will not feel that connected with the manager. But if the manager is trained on, you must have gone to a lot of training where, like we always tell to our managers, that when you are going to a meeting, don't start with, hey, let's talk about work. Start with knowing, hey, how your weekend went. Hey, last time we were talking about this. Hey, something which will make your person feel like you're connected, right? And then go to the agenda, of course, to talk about it. So like, how do you make sure that you're getting connected with your people? Or even if you have to give a bad news and saying you are not doing well, you should also train your managers to give hard feedbacks in a very proper way to your employees. I think these are the trainings we need to give, and these are the way by which a culture is built. Now, talking about open communication, right? If the managers are not trained to openly communicate, how the employee will receive that from a culture perspective? And the most important one, which I was talking to you, is that I think, like, many of us are good in pinpointing the mistake our people make, but very bad in appreciating the small good things they have done. So I think a pat on the back is something we should teach our managers. You know what? If you have an opportunity to tell the person that yesterday you made a spelling error in the presentation, or if another opportunity, say that overall your slide template was very good and you have only 1 minute and you can only say one thing, don't say that you have made a spelling error. Say that your presentation was very good, because that will give a confidence to that person that the manager is there not to only finger point or pinpoint on the mistake that person has made, but also to appreciate the work, because there has to be a balance. So we as an employee appreciate managers. We don't want managers who always appreciates. Like for every single thing you're appreciating, and even I know I made a mistake, but it has to be a balance also. And when you are maintaining a balance, nobody will take you as like that you are biased against the person. Like if as a manager you are saying, you know what, hey, you have done this mistake, so they will not say you are biased because they know you're going to also appreciate if I'm doing something good. So I think one place where an investment is needed from a culture perspective is manager, because when people go, they remember the company from the manager's eyes. If the manager was bullshit, they will go back and say, you know, don't join this company. The managers don't listen. They don't give you promotion. They don't even recommend you for any external training. They don't even not appreciate you. They will ask everything for you to do and they will not do anything. All those things will happen and it is all surrounded from manager, right? Because everything manager is saying, right? Even the salary increment, the promotion increment, and everything is done through manager. So I think, yes, a manager totally need a lot of training and the company should invest in.
Absolutely, Mr. Govind. I think you have shared some really good insights here, which anybody can relate to. Thank you so much for bringing it up here. I'll just take up one last question before we end the session. The last question from our attendee is, what are the tips to design a JD that reflects the company's culture?
Yeah, and that's an awesome question, because what happens is that when we talk about company culture, one thing we always forget is that company culture has to be also cascaded while hiring the team member, while evaluating their performance, while promoting them. This should be an integral part of that. And I think that's where exactly the audience, the person who's asked the question is asking. I would say that when you're designing the JD, there has to be a segment on values. So every company has values, right? In our company, we have values like intrinsic dignity, continuous improvement, open collaboration, outsized impact. These are the 4 values we have in 3 pillars. And why I remember like that without even looking at any document? Because we believe in living those values every single day. And that's why I know what those values are, what does that mean, and how can I exhibit those values? And also those values are written in our JD. That when you are hiring a person, make sure that you have these 4 things, those 4 things are there. There are questions in the interview panel which will tell you whether these values are there in the person or not. So we call them cultural rounds, right? So in the JD, you should have those values and how those values can be evaluated. But they should be used not only for hiring people, but also evaluating their performance, and also making sure when you're talking about promotion. Like, for example, if there is a promotion to happen and you feel that the person lacks intrinsic dignity, which means the person does not treat people with dignity and respect, we as talent will highly object on promotion of that person to manager. Because if that person becomes the manager and he doesn't know how to treat people with dignity and respect, and I'm telling you manager is the most important person, you know what will happen to the culture, and somebody leaves and what they're going to tell outside about 3 pillars. So we don't want to make that mistake. So I think we need to put those criteria well written in the JD and should be part of hiring, performance, promotion. And in some cases, if values and culture are not met, we should not also step back from taking hard step of asking people to leave the organization and go to the organization where their actions meet the culture of the company they want to work for, maybe not us, right? So I think we should definitely have those values mentioned in the JD.
Sure, Mr. Govind. Thank you so much for answering the question. So I think with this now we are coming to end of this session. So dear participants, if you have any other questions which are pending, which you may not be able to bring it up here, do not worry. You can always reach out to us to various modes. One is the Great Tribe community. Basically, this is a knowledge sharing platform. So you can put across your questions there and seek our responses. And also, before I end this session, once again, thank you, Mr. Govind, for this session. You have certainly given us a lot of insights on organizational culture in 2023. And also, dear attendees, thank you so much for joining this session and for making it successful. If you have any more questions related to this session, you can always write back to us on the given mail ID. So the mail ID is rakhigautam@greatip.com. So I think on this note, we are now going to end this session. We will see you soon in the upcoming session with another interesting topic. Till then, have a great time. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Rashmi. Have a nice day, everyone.